COVID-19 crashed into our nation in 2020, leaving no sector of society unaffected. Businesses, schools, churches, long-term care facilities, hospitals, and even the Parliament of Canada went into immediate and large-scale regroup as lockdowns were rolled out nationwide.
One of the things that's happening now is large numbers of people are saying that there should be an inquiry into the government's responses to COVID-19. What went right, what went wrong, but most importantly, what lessons can be learned that would apply to managing future crises as effectively and responsibly as we can. And so a small group of us put together this, it's a federally chartered company, not-for-profit company called the Citizens Inquiry Canada, that is endeavoring to promote and sponsor a national independent citizen-led inquiry into COVID-19.
How's it going? It's ADC. This is Talking Truth Takeover, Part 2, Conservative Christian Collusion. As always, like and subscribe to the Talking Truth channel on YouTube or Facebook, Rumble, whatever you're watching. Always buy us a coffee at co-fi.com/abpoly. Subscribe and support us at substack.com/@abpoly. Follow us on Twitter at ab_poly, on Facebook at abpoly.ca, and official merchandise and apparel for the Alberta Accountability Alliance, as well as our allies at abpoly.ca. We got lots to get to. Let's get at it. So, last time we talked about Fatine TV, and she had our friends, well, frenemies, I guess, Roy Byer and Doug Sharp, and the Battle for Canada, Battle for Alberta, the full episodes. Fatine's been very, very busy, and she had the Honorable Preston Manning talking about a citizen-led inquiry into Canada's pandemic response. You saw some of the clip there in our intro. Yeah, so this is the same guy who did the response that got paid $250,000 from Daniel
Here's some
Smith
other
to come up with the same great guests that Fatine has had. Polyev, Leslyn Lewis, Doug Sharp again with Stockwell Day, the Freedom Convoy, John Carpe, Stockwell Day, Andrew Lawton, Dr. James Lunny, who's not really a doctor, but let's not let truth or facts blur the great interviews that Fatine provides. And of course, Candice Bergen, that MP that is so beloved across Canada. Well, we will take a more in-depth look at Fatine Grisheshi and the new apostolic reformation. That's coming up in part 3. For now, let's focus on Preston Manning and his Christian conservative cohorts. So first of all, Preston Manning is actually Ernest Preston Manning. He's known as the father of modern-day Canadian conservatism, the son of Ernest Charles Manning, disciple and successor of William Bible Bill Aberhart, who was 8th Premier of Alberta for 25 years. Well, why is this so important? Well, Preston had a chance to talk about his dad and all these different things at the prayer breakfast in Calgary back in 2017. And there's some interesting aspects to there.
The Jesus story that most appeals to the social gospel tradition is that story of the Good Samaritan that was read today. According to evangelicals, the other stream, and I come from that tradition, the primary purpose of the Christian faith is to reconcile sinful individuals to a righteous God, to reconcile conflicts between man and God, and to achieve personal salvation and personal peace. The favorite New Testament passage of evangelicals is that one that was read this morning from the story of Nicodemus, who was told by Jesus that he had to be born again spiritually from within in order to live or work in the kingdom of God. Now, here in Calgary in the 1920s and 30s, one of the most prominent proponents of the evangelical perspective was the distinguished principal of Crescent Heights High School, William Aberhart. Is anybody here from Crescent Heights High School? Crescent Heights High School, that's got a great tradition. Aberhart pioneered not only religious radio broadcasting, but political radio broadcasting in the West over the old CFCN Voice of the Prairies radio station. In the 1920s, he opened a training school for ministers on 8th Avenue between 4th and 5th Street Southwest. There's that's the Holt Renfrew building down. There's a picture there of the old Institute building in that window. And with money that he raised from his radio listeners. My father, Ernest Manning, was raised on a homestead in Saskatchewan. I heard one of Aberhart's early radio broadcasts over a crystal radio set that he and his brother had put together, and enrolled as a student at that institute. As the Great Depression of the 1930s deepened, and Western Canada was caught not only in the financial depression, but a drought that virtually ruined Alberta's agricultural economy, Aberhart added a social dimension to his institute by opening a soup kitchen for the unemployed. And there he began to see in these long lines of young people lining up at his soup kitchen. They were riding the rails at the CPR, and they used to jump off the trains near his soup kitchen in order to avoid the CPR police. He started to see in those lines young people that he had sent off to be teachers and lawyers and professionals and so forth, just riding the rails from Vancouver to Winnipeg looking vainly for work. This experience compelled Aberhart to search for the causes of depression and led him to found a political party, the Social Credit Party, which contested and won the 1935 provincial election. So Aberhart, the evangelical layman and educator, reluctantly became Alberta's 7th premier. And my father, who'd come to Alberta to become a minister of the gospel, ended up running in that election, getting elected to the legislature, and becoming a minister of the crown. When Aberhart died in 1943, my father succeeded him as premier and served in that office until 1968, and also carried on the radio broadcast that William Aberhart had started. And so I was raised in a political home and a religious home, where I was taught that you had to make a decision at some point as to whether to follow Jesus of Nazareth or not. Follow me in particular by admitting that there was sin in your life that kept you from a relationship with God, by believing that Jesus had come to mediate that conflict between yourself and God, and through his sacrificial life and death, and by accepting Jesus as your personal reconciler and Savior.
His dad, and then him, when it was the Reform Party of Canada back in 1991. So we're looking at a connection here. Those of you who aren't familiar with the connection of Preston Manning, Preston Manning was the leader of the Reform Party of Canada. His successor was Stockwell Day. Stockwell Day was not well received across the country. Was received pretty decently in the West, but not out east. So enter Stephen Harper. And Harper was known as Steve Harper at the time when he ran as a for an MP seat under the Reform Party out of Calgary. So publicly, Stephen Harper was strongly committed to conservative principles and opposed Manning's inclinations toward populism, which Harper saw as leading to compromise on core ideological values. But in actuality, Harper played the long game, utilizing blue conservative values until gaining the power of the prime minister. Those values were traded for the colonial crony capitalism that he utilized during his 9 years in power. So back to Manning, post-public political career, Manning founded 2 not-for-profit organizations, the Manning Foundation for Democratic Education and the Manning Center for Building Democracy, along with the creation of the Manning Center Networking Conference, which is now known as the Canada Strong and Free Networking Conference. The Manning Center is now known as the Canada Strong and Free Network. Well, let's go back to the Manning Foundation for Democratic Education. In August of 2007, the Manning Foundation for Democratic Education became an official nonprofit organization with the Canadian Revenue Agency. Registered charity in the Calgary area. Okay, makes sense. Preston Manning's from Calgary. And having it registered in Calgary makes perfect sense. Of course, when you go to the actual Manning Foundation website and you look up the address is Unit 413, number 9, 3151 Lakeshore Road in Kelowna, British Columbia. Do a Google Map search and it looks mighty familiar as, is it Better Call Ernie? Because if you look at this picture on the left, that's the office of Saul Goodman in Better Call Saul. The location on the right is a nail spa inside that complex at that address. Well, not technically not at number 9. It's actually at number 8. So where is number 9? Well, number 9 is the UPS store in Kelowna at this same address in the same complex. So unit 413 in this UPS store is a very small office, or if we use some logic and common sense, it's a P.O. box. But the foundation is registered in Alberta, but their office is in Kelowna. Very interesting. So then when we look a little deeper at the foundation, we see that they're, according to the CRA, their director and trustees, number 1 is Clifford Friars. And I know you guys are like, why does that name sound somewhat familiar? The Castle Avery Hospitality Group. Okay, sure. That makes sense. Well, Gare Friars is the president and chief operating officer. There's Clifford. Let's read a little more on Clifford. So as of August 2020, Cliff Friars is currently focusing his time on his own enterprises through his family holding company, Castle Avery Merchants, Inc. These include Canada Developments, a storage company, Stampede Entertainment, Inc. Wow. Why does Stampede Entertainment, Inc. sound so familiar? Well, that would be because it's the official booking agent, Western Canada's live music event specialists who brought all these major artists into Calgary and surrounding areas. So let's take a look at current events that they're planning. Well, we get the Hunter Brothers in Medicine Hat, Entertainment Inc., the Hunter Brothers in Red Deer. He continues as chairman of the board of the Manning Foundation for Democratic Education and a member of the board of the Canada Strong and Free Network, formerly the Manning Center for Building Democracy. He's also served on ANMAX Corp board of directors and board of directors on a number of different things. Well, why is Mr. Fryer so important? Well, he was the chief of staff to Preston Manning, the House of Commons, the Reform Party, and the Canadian Alliance until June 2000. Assumed the former role of Chief of Staff in June 1997 in order to help build the United Alternative, which became the Canadian Alliance. And he's been on these different strategy committees. He's got his legal stuff. He's also the vice president of the Ranchmen's Club of Calgary. And we all know the Ranchmen's, right, folks? The Ranchmen's, that's known for their white hatting, including white hatting Nazis. Anyway, the directors and trustees. Well, the two other names on there are Gwyn Morgan and Pat Trottier. Well, again, those names sound quite familiar. Well, let's take a look at the Gwyn Morgan Patricia Trottier Foundation. That's a lot of revenue there. The mailing address is Calgary. Makes sense. Long-term investments, $14.7 million. Cash on hand is $571,000. Your total assets are $15 million. Foundations usually have $15 million of assets? Possibly. I know that that's one of the strategies of the wealthy to start foundations so then they can pass down their wealth without being taxed on it. It's just very interesting that there's almost $15 million worth of assets for this foundation who are the board of directors for the Manning Foundation. Again, very interesting information indeed. So back to the Manning Foundation, your total eligible revenue, and that's revenue that is eligible for charity issued tax receipts, is $1.2 million. Okay. So that means that the Manning Foundation took in 2022, $1.2 million. Lots of charities take in good amounts, good fundraisers. Makes sense. Then we look at the expenditures. And other expenditures not included in their other numbers is $898,538. And those amounts go to C2C Journal contractors, contributions, and projects. Well, that's a lot of money going to something for projects. That's got to be a huge amount of sort of democratic building program that they're looking at doing. No, it's ideas that lead, including part of the team, Ezra Levant. And great articles including Marxism Won't Solve Canada's Rental Housing Crisis, despite what Ottawa thinks, and Hating Jordan Peterson. Alberta's COVID-19 report, written by Barry Cooper. Oh, there's Denial Smith herself. And there's the illustrious Emperor Palpatine himself, the Exalted One. With all this final report, with all these distinguished experts, including Michelle Kelly-Gagnon, President Emeritus of the Montreal Economic Institute, John C. Major, a former Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, Jack Mintz. Well, we all know Jack. Jack's all in there, CEO of this and board director of that. And it goes on to describe the Alberta's NDP and left-wing media helpers accusing the panel of mongering conspiracy theories. This is just a beautiful written thing. And we have Lieutenant Colonel David Redman, architect of Alberta's emergency plan in the post 9/11 era. All these great things. Oh, there's old Dr. Dina, who sold her soul for a paycheck and cashed in her Hippocratic oath to be a hypocrite and take the money and run. Some great journalism here. And we've got left-leaning, lots of stuff here. Oh, King George School, got to talk about that. Oh, we got to talk about the lockdowns killing the families. All these things, stop the spike, end the petition. Excuse me, they're lying to you. My God, did he write the whole article? Oh, look, there's Jordan Peterson again. These are such brilliant people that you have these stories. These are these genius stories. So over $900,000 in the year 2022 donated to the CTC Journal for Ideas That Lead. Any way that influences the narrative that they're pushing? It's a donor-supported publication. So when you get donated $900,000 a year, it's easy for you to... Fake news is free. Not this fake news. It's $900,000 a year. And that's what the Manning Center for Democratic Education decided to put those dollars in. So let's go back to the Canada Strong and Free Network, formerly the Manning Center of whatever, and their Conservative Values Tomorrow program. Why wouldn't we hear about this before? Well, I guess because we're not conservative. And they show a great offer for people, well, young people, that are able to learn from the masters of conservatism. So this Canada Strong and Free Network pleased to announce the launch of our leadership development program, Conservative Values Tomorrow. Founded in 2005 at the Manning Center to support Canada's conservative movement, today we're committed to empowering the next generation of conservatives. The goal of this program to ensure the emerging leaders are equipped to tackle the problems of tomorrow. CSFN will work with successful applicants to identify a key policy area of interest, assign each applicant a mentor who can help develop his or her expertise. Applicants will also be provided with skills and personal development opportunities, publishing opportunities, wonder in C2C. Invitation to the regional conference in Red Deer, as well as an invitation to the national conference Note, these invitations includes travel, accommodations, and meals. Applicants are limited to Canadians who are no older than 29 years of age. Apply, you must provide basic personal information, answer all applicable questions, and participants are expected to commit to the following each month: 1 hour meeting with an assigned mentor, 2 hour skills development session, and 1 hour cohort meeting. And of course, the applications are currently closed because they've already got the stuff. And they have, interesting. So when you click on the link to donate, they've deactivated the form. Quite interesting, because just last week that form. So let's go to the actual Canada Strong and Free page. And the one thing you will learn about the Conservatives and the Canada Strong and Free Network and all the Coalition or the Collusion, they are not very good with websites. So click the donate button and you can donate a one-time donation, recurring donation, all these things, help cover the cost, credit card information, all the normal aspects of this. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to have a donation button on your website. Problem is the Canada Strong and Free Network isn't a charity. When we looked at the Revenue Canada and registered charities under Manning, the only one that came up was the Manning Center that has their mailing address in Kelowna, BC. The Canada Strong and Free Network are either collecting donations under the banner of the Manning Center for Democratic Education, or they're collecting donations a different way. We're not inside the organization. We cannot confirm or deny that, but we'll let you just chew on that one for a bit. So when we look at the Canada Strong and Free Network, we go to the conference. And this one was very interesting. It was the Manning National Networking Conference 2020. So it ended up becoming an online conference due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still going on, by the way. So mask up and do all those different things. But yeah, COVID is not over. It is actually running rampant here in Alberta. So please take your precautions. The goal for these collusion cohorts is to decimate the public healthcare system and make it a private healthcare system. And it's working really well in decimating. Hasn't quite made the private system yet, but that's on the way. We can see the writing on the wall. Anyway, back to the conference. And at that time, it was the Conservative Party of Canada leadership candidates debate. So you had Peter MacKay, Aaron O'Toole, Derek Sloan, moderators, Tasha Kay, and then Chorus Radio media personality Danielle Smith. Current Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. So on the Friday, the managing editor of the Hill Times. What's next for the Manning Center? It was what's next for national unity? A look at the state of the Federation. Well, in that panel had the Honorable former Premier of British Columbia, Christy Clark, the Honorable Preston Manning, founder and leader of the Reform Party of Canada, Senator Andre Prote, former editor-in-chief at La Presse, and the moderator from Global News Calgary, Danielle Smith. Ask the Experts Fiscal Edition, Governor General Ballroom 2. Moderator Danielle Smith from Global News. Your guest, Honorable Joe Oliver, former Canadian Minister of Finance under the Stephen Harper government. And Dr. Jack Mintz. Again, remember we talked about Jack Mintz? Now Premier Danielle Smith, and certain aspects that have been added to boards, experts, and they're the subject matter experts and all this sort of thing. Very interesting that 3 years ago, Danielle Smith was at the same event as Jack Mintz and Preston Manning and all this stuff, and they were on stage and they're talking there and building a rapport. And then, of course, there's the socials afterwards. The 2 to 3 p.m., we had Michael Binion from the Modern Miracle Network, and we'll talk more about the Modern Miracle Network shortly, and moderator Brian Lilly from the Toronto Sun. At 4:30 to 5:15, keynote address from the Honorable Jason Kenney, Premier of Alberta, then Premier of Alberta. On the Saturday, keynote address and fireside chat was with Dennis Prager, American radio host, political commentator, author, and founder of PragerU. Moderator Chris Sims of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Provinces and Confederation, moderator Mark Spiro, Crestview Strategy. Cliff Fryers Award presentation with Cliff Fryers and Preston Manning. Networking lunch, what's next in online political communication? Kevin Chan, Global Director and Head of Public Policy Canada at Facebook. Jason Key, Public Policy and Government Relations Counsel at Google. Candace Malcolm, Founder and Editor-in-Chief at True North Center. Peter Menzies, former Vice Chair of the CRTC. And then things get, thank you to our sponsors, Intuit, TurboTax, Credit Karma, QuickBooks, MailChimp. The Modern Miracle Network is a premier sponsor, as well as Labatt Canada. Meta was a gold sponsor. You know, the guy from Facebook that was talking. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Always a good conversation for your conservatives. Your silver sponsors, Air Canada, Amazon, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, Canadian Medical Association, TELUS, Cree, bronze sponsors, Bruce Power, Innovation at Work, Coca-Cola Canada, DoorDash, Enbridge, Greenfield, Manulife, Rick Eckstein, Suma TD, Vida Arive. Your partners and exhibitors. Oh, there's C2C Journal, Ideas That Lead, $900K a year. Cardis, CHP Canada, CCMBC, Conservative Quebec, ICSC Canada, Generation Screwed, Global Public Affairs, Institute for Liberal Studies. Oh, there's our friends, the Justice Center for Freedom. Rights for Vapors, 2nd Street, The News Forum, True North, Vaccine Choice Canada, The Western Standard. Other events were sponsored by the Manning Foundation for Democratic Education, Canada Strong and Free Network, Grill, and the Modern Miracle Network. Well, the Modern Miracle Network is very, very interesting because when you look at them, they only have a LinkedIn page and it's got one woman that's connected to them. So that one's, there's like McKinnon, there's other aspects to that, but they're very connected to this network and are part of that a lot. But Kirill is the one that we wanted to focus on just
Slightly.
Stephen B. Mannix is executive chair. So when we show
Philip
the
J.
stream, Holman, vice chair, the Honorable Rhoda Ambrose on the board of directors. Oh, look, it's the former Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, on the board of directors for Corel. Other partners are the Atlas Network, the Leadership Institute, and our friends, the Global Alliance of the Center Right, the IDU. Many of us have been talking about the IDU for years. The dangers of the IDU, how they've infiltrated politics, how they continue to implant their people. Well, let's quickly look at the Atlas network because that one's quite entertaining. Well, not entertaining. Nothing's entertaining. It's all a cesspool. So we've got some
when
people.
we
Look
John
at
Locke
the Atlas
Foundation.
network. Scott Hennig. Sorry, Hennig, like Kurt Hennig. The president and CEO of the Canadian Taxpayer Federation. Oh, Chief Executive Officer of Free the People Foundation. Commonwealth Foundation, the Reason Foundation, the Fund for American Studies. John Tillman is the co-director of Atlas Network Center for U.S. Canada, and Niels Veldhuis, president of the Fraser Institute. When we look at, and that's your Atlas Network, the Leadership Institute, it says, what do we want to look at? We want to look at the states? No, let's look at Canada. And what do they offer in Canada? They offer this. The Joseph U. Oswald Patriot Online School Board Training Program. How to run for school board and win. And that, my friends, is what Take Back Alberta and all the people that are connected to the Strong and Free network that we talked about in part one want to do. They want to take over the school board. Why do you want to take over the school board? Because then you can indoctrinate the children and ensure that the education they're receiving is Christian conservative values. So why is the IDU so important? Well, the IDU in leadership someone you might recognize, the Right Honorable Stephen Harper, Canada's 22nd Prime Minister, was unanimously elected chairman of the International Democrat Union at the party leaders meeting in Madrid, Spain, held on February 21st, 2018. Mr. Harper succeeds the Right Honorable Sir John Kay, former Minister of New Zealand, as chairman of the IDU. That's right, folks. Former Prime Minister Darth Vader himself, Stephen Harper, is the leader of the IDU. Deputy Chairman, Brian Loughnane of the Liberal Party, Australia. And your honorary chairman, the old crusty man himself, Lord Ashcroft from the UK. Let's look at the honorary advisory board. Who old Stevie Harper is working with. Oh, that would be Tony Abbott, former Prime Minister of Australia. Jose Maria Aznar, Prime Minister of Spain. The Right Honorable David Cameron, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Sir Bill English, Prime Minister of New Zealand from 2016-2017. John Howard, Prime Minister of Australia from 96 to 07. Janez Janša, Prime Minister of Slovenia from 04 to 08, 2012-13, 2020 to 2022. Seeing a pattern here, folks. There is the Muppet himself, Right Honorable Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of the UK from 2019 to 2022. John Key, Prime Minister of New Zealand. Sebastian Kurz, Chancellor of Austria. Theresa May, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Honorable Scott Morrison of Australia. Sebastian Pinera, President of Chile. Petro Poroshenko, former President of the Ukraine. And unfortunately, Zelensky is no better than Poroshenko. The difference is Poroshenko has more deaths under his belt that's known. And then you have Marek Topolánek, the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, and her lettuce herself, the Right Honorable Liz Truss, MP, and the shortest reigning Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in 2022. So that's what you have with old Steve Harper. Especially current leader Benjamin Netanyahu ensuring a public display of unconditional support of the Israeli occupation of Palestine on numerous occasions. And all this led to one of the most, one of the most memorable, embarrassing, just unforgettable moments in Stephen Harper's career. So he could have just said, "Hey, Jew," and the brilliance of Stephen Harper on the keyboard, serenading with a massive show of bromance to then current Prime Minister, evil son of a bitch, Benjamin Netanyahu. And why do I say evil son of a bitch? Well, because Netanyahu is part of the Likud Party. Likud Party joined the IDU in September of 2018. Pictured here, Mr. Stephen Harper and Likud Foreign Affairs Director Eli Hassan. Ensured that Netanyahu links the far-right titan as Jewish home Likud signed the agreement. From the Israeli propaganda machine I-24 News, Netanyahu's okay with bringing racists into Israel parliament because there was no other choice and we need to win. The Likud parties. Eli Hassan tells Amy Kaufman for the elections in 2019. Oren Hassan having a selfie with 45. A little bit back to the Manning Foundation, approximately 10 years ago. And this is a very interesting story indeed.
Microscope. It was released today by the Manning Foundation for Democratic Education and looks at voting patterns of all aldermen when it comes to spending. But as the CBC's Tara Fadun explains, the findings are raising a few questions.
The foundation believes strongly that democracy hinges on the way that voters are able to understand how their elected representatives behave.
And with that, a report is released by the nonprofit Manning Foundation. It looks at 73 council votes over the last 3 years, focused specifically on taxation and spending.
We feel that we're solving a real problem here, which is simply lowering the costs to voters of monitoring their councillors' behavior.
Among the highlights, who votes no to increase spending and who votes yes, who raises the most questions, which aldermen vote alike or against one another, and how much time is spent in camera where discussions and decisions are in private. The foundation maintains there is no agenda.
The main thing about this is that it's up to voters to judge. We're providing the information, and we've tried to do it in as value-neutral way as possible.
That individual who was with the Manning Foundation covering data for the city of Calgary 10 years ago. But he seemed to pop up somewhere else recently. Oh, that's right. He is the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. I shit you not. The guy who was part of the Manning Foundation for Democratic Education doing a investigative whatever panel report for Preston Manning and his foundation 10 years ago is now the leader of Act for Freedom in New Zealand, and as of last week became the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand, part of a three-party coalition.
National Party inked a deal to form a new three-party coalition government on Friday, after weeks of negotiations over ministerial roles and policies. Prime Minister-elect Christopher Luxon said the new government's first order of business would be to bring down inflation, narrowing the remit of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand to focus monetary policy only on price stability.
Really important, we don't believe the dual mandate model has worked. We want a single mandate. We think making it very clear to the Reserve Bank that there is a single goal of price stability gives massive certainty to everybody in the country.
A key sticking point in the discussions was who will take the role of Deputy Prime Minister. The coalition said the role will be split between the leaders of two parties, David Seymour, who heads the Libertarian ACT Party, and Winston Peters from the populist New Zealand First Party. When asked about China's growing influence, Peters, who will also serve as foreign minister, compared the relationship between China and New Zealand to that between New Zealand and Niue, a small island country in the South Pacific.
Size doesn't matter, respect does. That's all we ask for.
The coalition has said they plan to, quote, rewrite the Arms Act without giving further details, and would undertake a review of the gun registry that was introduced after a gunman killed 51 Muslim worshippers in 2019. The agreement also lays out a shift in policy towards the country's indigenous Maori people, with plans to roll back the use of the language and review affirmative action policies, a move that outgoing Prime Minister Chris Hipkins said was, quote, going backwards by 3 or 4 decades. The group also plans to roll back a ban on offshore oil and gas drilling, as well as overturn a ban introduced by the previous Labour government on the sale of cigarettes to future generations.
In the video there that they are looking to push all the rights and freedoms for the people, not the indigenous people. They want to screw the indigenous people over, just like all the colonizing countries here in North America do. You want to learn more about the Canada Strong and Free Network, you can visit our friends at desmog.com/Canada-proud, and you can see the connection, the relationships, and such between those individuals, those groups. So there's a little bit on the Canada Strong and Free network I really wanted to share about the new Prime Minister of New Zealand, or Deputy Prime Minister, and how the coalition governments and all these Christian right aspects. So David Seymour connected directly to Preston Manning, different Manning Center events. There's direct coalition to the conservative mandates and the Christian mandates across the board. It's right wing Christian conservatism that's trying to be pushed across the country, starting in different provinces. And right now they've got a stranglehold on Ontario, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. And they're looking to grow that nationally with bringing in Polyev. And if you look at the Canada-Israel Partnership event, and that had former Premier Jason Kenney, John Baird, and Sabrina Mado. Again, we're warning you now. Fascism's already here. This is the right. This is the connection. This is the collusion. And we will discuss more on that collusion in part 3 when we talk about Faitine and how she's connected to this, and basically has become a giant bullhorn for the right and the Christian conservatives. Here's an intro to one of her episodes, and you can judge on why we should be very concerned about Faitine Grishecki and her influence on our country.
Welcome back to the show. Is there a place or a case for socially conservative Canadians, those who believe in traditional family values, in the influencing of our nation's politics today? That is the topic of today's discussion. Some would say that those with traditional moral values have no place in government and should just keep their moral opinions to their own private lives. After all, government is amoral, it's neutral, it's secular. Others would say that traditional morality is actually the lifeblood of government, and it's what creates orderly and just societies, as values such as telling the truth, not killing, not stealing, or paying your debts are all translated into legislation that help us keep the peace. During his time as Justice Minister in 1967, Pierre Elliott Trudeau stated that there was no place for the state in the bedrooms of Canadians. However, in recent years, we have seen that the bedrooms of Canadians have become very active in the state, a complete double standard. So which is it? Is government secular and amoral, or will it inevitably be a conduit of someone's definition of morality? In one of our recent shows, a doctor fighting for conscience rights actually put it this way: when I hear someone say physicians should leave their morality at home, I don't think they mean I should leave my honesty or my compassion. What they want me to leave at home is a certain moral opinion that happens to disagree with them. Touché. Is separation of church and state a Canadian value? Well, as someone pointed out to me years ago, while this sentence is often thrown around in this conversation, those who quote it do so out of line with its original intent most of the time. The truth is that separation of church and state was always to keep government from controlling ministers. It was never to keep Christians or those coming from a faith perspective from actually influencing the governmental sphere. When asking the question of whether or not socially conservative Canadians should be involved in government, perhaps we should take a step back further and ask, are socially conservative Canadians, are Christians, Canadian too? Do they have a right to be involved? Do they have a voice and a right to bring their ideas to the table, even if they at times disagree with what Hollywood's pumping out? Well, in recent days, socially conservative Canadians have not only proven to be convinced of the importance of being involved in shaping our nation, they've actually proven to be the game-changing force in it. Both in the national conservative leadership race and the Ontario PC leadership race, analysts have concluded that socially conservative Canadians actually determined the outcome of those elections. What does God think about all this? Well, one thing we know for certain is that he's not afraid to talk about it. Multiple books of the Bible actually hit this head on. Judges, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, Deuteronomy, even Song of Solomon talks about governance and governors. So if he's not afraid to talk about it, neither am I.
Anyone who really wants to refocus this needs to actually look at the dangers of this. And like I said, the dangers of the conservative Christian values. Because don't be fooled. Fatine may look like a very smiling, friendly person, but deep down, she's an evil, conniving Christian. And we will get more into those details next time. In the meantime, be sure to visit the official home of AB Poli merchandise for the Alberta Accountability Alliance and our allies, including the just launched Denial Declaration design. I declare sovereignty. Stop the con job, people. We need to stop the con job. $29.97, varied sizes, comfortable black next level apparel. Or if you just need something for the office or as such, you can get the same Stop the Con job. I declare sovereignty in the evil Denial Smith declaration on a coffee mug, ceramic mug, 1997, dual-sided design, 3,500 dishwasher cycle safe. We have a number of the cups. Beautiful design. Our distribution center does a great job. I make the designs. They do all the printing and distribution. Rainian family-owned operation based in Canada, and very proud to utilize an ethically and ethnically owned operation. So visit the website abpoli.ca. While you're there, it's still going on and will be going on for another month at least. The breakdown, our allies from the breakdown offering a knitted cuffed beanie, limited edition with the breakdown logo. All net proceeds to benefit Cassandra, one of the breakdown family members who is been struggling on disability and such, and want to make sure that we can provide some support for Cassandra and get the logo out for our allies at the breakdown. Again, subscribe, support more episodes like this, substack.com/@abpoli. Follow us on Twitter @AB_Poli, Facebook, abpoli.ca, and shop official merchandise, abpoli.ca, or buy us a coffee and help keep videos going, because we all need to educate and inform before we can infiltrate and change. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.